Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Meet the Parents podcast for more chat from some of the UK's top parent bloggers. I'm Tim from Slouching Towards Thatcham, and this evening I'm talking with Dave from the Dadventurer. Good evening, Dave.
Hey Tim, how you doing?
Very good, thanks. So on this week's podcast we're going to talk about how Toddler L growing up has impacted Dave's work-life balance and why she's now started nursery. Last week, Amy, Hannah and I discussed how we each juggle our own work-life balance. Now, let's pick up the thread of that discussion from a stay-at-home dad's perspective. Now, Dave, your situation is similar to Hannah's insofar that you're a stay-at-home parent who juggles childcare with earning a living part-time from your blog and associated activities. So why don't we just start by reminding us quickly how you came to the decision to become a stay-at-home dad in the first place?
So it was a situation thing really. I had just gone freelance, doing freelance football and betting writing after the company I was working for went under. My wife was earning decent wage with what she was doing and stuff, and it just felt like the best thing for us as a family would be if I took on the childcare and she continued working because of proximity to home and things like that, rather than me necessarily going out and looking for a full-time job. And the plan was, if I could bring in a little bit of money through freelance writing, then that would help the family out that way.
Yeah, so all this time you've been building up your blog, The Dadventurer. Now, as you and I know, there's no small amount of effort involved in that. You know, you invest time building relationships with brands, you're spending time travelling to attend events and writing content for those brands, as well as posting all your other non-commercial content and being active across social media, which, as any blogger will tell you, takes up as much of your time as the actual writing itself. So give us an idea how much time you spend on blog related activities in an average week, and then also how you've fitted this in around Toddler L's needs too.
I don't know whether I really want to calculate it, because that would be quite scary. I think as well, if there was an actual number and if Hayley was listening, then she'd sort of realise how much I actually spend doing that rather than spending time with her and with Toddler L. I guess I do something blog related every single day, and I probably have done every day since I started 2 and a bit years ago. As part of that, I look to, well, let me put it another way. I'm always doing something on social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm involved in a Facebook parent blogger group, which I'm quite actively involved in and do a lot within there. And then you've got the blogging on top of that. So whether that's my own stuff or whether that's collaborating with brands. So really, I would say that it's not uncommon to be at my laptop most of the day, and it's balancing that around things that I'm doing with Toddler L. So, you know, take a Monday, for instance, what we normally do is go to a dance class in the morning, and then when we come home, she'll have a nap, which means I can do a bit of work then. And then if we're just hanging around the house in the afternoon, she'll sort of be playing whilst I'll have the laptop on my knee. We'll then eat, she'll go to bed, and then I'll sort of have the laptop on my knee again in the evening as sort of half watching something with the missus, really. So, yeah, it takes up pretty much every second I've got.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, isn't it? I think that often non-bloggers don't necessarily appreciate with blogging is that you do spend pretty much every waking hour either blogging or thinking about blogging.
Exactly.
or doing something that's associated with it. As you say, you're on all various social media and then running the Facebook group and so on. So it can be quite all-consuming. It's almost a full-time job in itself, isn't it?
It is. It's the best way of viewing it is it's actually your life. that you're putting out there. So whenever you do anything, you're thinking about, oh, shall I take a photo for this? Or actually, that would make a good idea to put into this post. So, I don't know how other people work, but my brain's just continually ticking with everything to do with it and thinking about how can I, take things to the next level and, put things out in a slightly different way or whatever.
Now, admit it, have you ever woken up in the middle of the night to jot down some notes for an idea you've had in your sleep?
I don't think I have, actually, which is quite surprising. But what I try to do before bed is just get ideas down when I'm at the laptop anyway. So I think by the time I come to bed, I'm probably so knackered in my mind that I just, go to sleep.
Now that Elle's past 2, I guess the shape of your typical day with her is very different to what it used to be when she was, just a few months old, isn't it? I mean, I guess, she won't spend as much of the day sleeping, and she must require a lot more interaction and attention now than she did back in the days before she was walking. So how much has that impacted on your ability to work during the day? And consequently, what's the knock-on effect that's had on the balance of your life in the evenings and at weekends and so on?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think so. I was at home for 9 months with Hayley whilst she was on maternity leave, so that was quite good because we had 2 people in the house doing things, so I could still crack on and do whatever. When I became stay-at-home dad, when Elle was sort of 9-10 months old, was when things changed, and obviously it was me in full responsibility of her. So as she was a baby, she could be put down on a mat and just basically lay there and not really do anything but soil herself and be sick on herself type thing. But the older she got, the more demanding she's become. As soon, I think the biggest change for me was when she started walking and she was mobile, and then literally you can't look at a laptop screen and have another eye going in the opposite direction to watch what she's climbing on. So yeah, the older she's got, the more attention she requires. So it's watching her a lot more and interacting with her a lot more, obviously. But on the flip side, she can entertain herself more. So whether it's sort of getting the Play-Doh out and then she's in front of me playing with it on the table whilst I've got the laptop on my knee, I can still talk to her and I can still show her things, or if she wants my attention, or if she can have it. But it's a continual thing, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, and I remember this must be going back the best part of a year or so now. You wrote something, didn't you, about just the impact that her dropping a nap during the day had on your ability to spend time writing.
You say a year ago, it was actually only a couple of months ago, and that's one of my proudest parenting moments, that I managed to get her to just under 2 years on 2 naps a day. So she still has 1 nap at the moment, which is good because I can crack on with whatever for an hour and a half. But yeah, I was so chuffed that I managed to get her to nearly 2 years of age and still have 2 naps.
God, was it really as recently as that?
It was, yeah. It was only a couple of months ago that I wrote about it. But yeah, that was a big change because obviously I had my morning and I had my afternoon where I could guarantee that I'd almost get a minimum of hour to myself, whether that was watching a box set or actually doing a bit of work or cleaning the house or whatever. So I think the thing I found the most, and obviously we're going to move on to the recent change we've had as well with things, but it's just about trying to get more productive with my time. So I don't know about you and how you do it, but I end up spending so much time with the laptop on my knee where I'll go to Twitter, nothing's happened. I'll go to Facebook, I'll refresh something. Oh, I've got an email, I'll reply to that. And I just go through this sequence of copying the same 10, 15 actions over and over again. And then,
Yeah.
then 3 hours has passed and I've not written anything on the blog post. And I'm like, oh, bloody hell.
Yeah, the only way I've ever been able to cope with that is to literally go into social media silence for a couple of hours and force myself to put the phone away and concentrate on the writing. Because you're right, it's a convenient distraction, isn't it? And as you say, it's very easy for you to just pop onto Facebook for 5 minutes, and then, as you say, 2 or 3 hours later, you're still there and nothing's been done.
Exactly, because I think the thing is, because the blogging world is all encompassing and you've got so many different notifications coming up on different social media platforms, for instance, there's always something happening. And because it's your life, you can sit there thinking, oh, I'm actually working, thinking I'm actually working, spending 20 minutes writing the wittiest tweet in the world. And then you're actually like, I could have written a few paragraphs during that time.
There are times when it just seems like your phone is constantly going ping, 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 ping with constant notifications, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, so much of what you say just really echoes with me. I mean, over a number of years, we had our kids popping out at pretty much 2-year intervals, and so we basically had at least one child, Toddler L's age or younger, non-stop for about 7 years. And it's only really been in the past 18 months or so that our routines have started to shift back to anything resembling normal. So, for years, Heather was so constantly tired that she was basically always in bed by 10 o'clock, which, coupled with the fact that I'm a bit of a night owl, meant that, I always had at least a couple of hours every evening to devote to blogging stuff or, to watching TV or, generally kind of me stuff. But now that she's back on adult time, as it were, in the evenings, my blogging started to fall into us time rather than me time. And that's definitely much more intrusive, and it has a real impact on both of our work-life balances. And, as a result, we now typically spend a couple of evenings a week with me locked away in the study while Heather's catching up with work, and we don't have anywhere near as much time to ourselves as either of us would like. I'm not sure there's an easy answer to that. On top of that routine, she's usually out with friends at least once a week, which is something I'm always telling her she should absolutely do and not feel guilty about. And I'm either out late or staying away too. So trying to find even 1 or 2 free nights a month for us just to go out for dinner, or even just sit in front of the telly together is a real challenge.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough, innit?
Yeah, it can be, but that's an element of modern life that's true for many couples, I guess, whether you're a blogger or not. Now, there's been some big news in the Hornby household this past couple of weeks, hasn't there? So, Toddler L has now started nursery at the ripe old age of 2 and a bit. Now, I know the move to put her into nursery was something that it was always on the agenda at some point, wasn't it? But it's happened maybe a little bit sooner than you planned. So, tell us what's prompted that change happening now.
I just had enough. No,
was that you've had enough or she'd had enough?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest. We'd always thought that she'd go into nursery probably around 3 when it sort of coincided with the free nursery hours. But because in a not big-headed sense, because the blog's going so well, it feels a shame to sort of put a halt on that. So what we decided was if she could go to nursery for a day and a half a week, those 15 or so hours would allow me to have time which I could designate just to blogging and just to getting on top of things and start actually getting ahead of the game rather than just being so reactive when it comes to everything I do. So, yeah, she has been at nursery for a couple of weeks now, which means I have a Tuesday from 8 till 6 just to myself, and then a Thursday afternoon from 1 till 6. And what I've been doing with that time is just going into the office and locking myself in there and just getting my head in front of the laptop and cracking on and getting on top of stuff that I need to do. Because I think it was getting to a point where, not that I couldn't cope, because that sounds like I was sort of going a bit crazy at home. It wasn't that. It was more that I had a full-time job with her and nearly getting to the point of a full-time job with the blog, and I was trying to do both at the same time, and something had to give. And the last thing I wanted was to actually be doing a really crap job with her and be doing a really crap job with the blog. So it just made sense to bring it forward and explore the possibility in nursery, and then it just went from there, really.
When it came to putting her into nursery, did you just have a choice of one, or did you have to go through some kind of selection process looking at multiple nurseries?
So we're quite lucky that where we live is quite a nice area in terms of schools and nurseries, and all of that are of a high quality. So we had sort of like this 5 or 6 nurseries in the area. I got in touch with each of them, and then sort of vetted them a bit as to whether they even got back to me. If somebody can't even be bothered to reply to me, then that's not a great sign in my view. And there was one which had an open day, which we went along to, quite liked it. We've actually got friends who have a kid there as well, and they had the availability, and we sort of thought, well, what's the point of looking around other places or whatever when this does what we need it to do? So it was sort of a first place we saw, liked it, went with it.
Okay. So, but did you have any particular criteria in mind when you were considering which nurseries to look at?
Not really, if I'm honest. I think a lot of it was around the feel for the place. So did it have like enough toys and arts and crafts and things like that? Did it have outdoor space? Because Elle's a big fan of running around outdoors and climbing things and whatever. So did it have the outside space? What did the nursery? I still don't know what they're called. Nursery teachers, or what would you call them? Care workers, case workers, or
Care workers brings up a completely different kind of meaning, doesn't it?
the people that look after my kid during the week, shall we call them that? So yeah, whether they were nice. So, and obviously availability as well. There was a few places we'd got in touch with that didn't have availability on the days we wanted them. So ultimately that factored in quite significantly.
Yeah, and I think we were quite similar to you. I mean, availability was a big issue for us, and funny something you said, the outside space as well. That was really high on our list of criteria, and we were really lucky in the end that we found a nursery that was really highly rated locally. It was bang on Heather's route to work. And it's set in 2 acres of its own land, so it's got its own vegetable garden and a little kind of wooded glen, and all the kind of outdoor play areas and toys and stuff that you could possibly ever want for kids. I was quite jealous, really. I wanted to play there too. Summer and winter, the kids were outside pretty much every day the weather allowed, and looking back, actually that was such a huge bonus. I mean, it gives them so much more scope than if they're just kind of locked up in a room, or they've got a tiny little garden that everyone has to share. And it's great for giving them the opportunity to run around and burn off some of that excess energy as well.
Exactly, and just to follow their interests as well. Like I say, Elle's quite an active kid, so she'd much prefer to be running around playing like on the swings and slides, or going on the little go-karts or anything like that, rather than necessarily being inside, being forced to listen to stories, for instance.
Yeah, now I know you've also said that particularly in those first few days, it hasn't all been plain sailing, and she struggled a little bit, didn't she, with her settling in sessions. So kind of talk us through what happened and how that felt.
Yeah, she did. I was quite surprised about it, really. She's a really confident little kid, and I joke that she hates me. So whenever she's around me, she's okay. Whenever somebody else is with us, she wants nothing to do with me at all, and she'll just be with whoever that other person is. So when it's like, say, me and Hayley, for instance, at home, she won't hold my hand. She won't really go near me. She won't come and give me a hug if Hayley asks, or anything like that. So I was there thinking, sort of in a blissful state, we'll go to nursery and she'll be fine because she won't want to hang around with me. She'll be more than happy to hang out with, let's call them the people who look after my kid during the day. So it was really surprising when we first went there. So we went there on a Tuesday for an hour and a half, and I stayed with her, and she was playing and like sort of interacting with the other kids and stuff, but she knew that I was there, even though I wasn't like holding her hand and stuff like that. I was giving her the space. So that was okay. We then went back on the Thursday, and I tried to take a step back, so I sort of stood out of the room a little bit more, and all she did was kept running over to the gate and like crying for me and stuff, which was just totally unexpected. And then on the Friday was the first day when I physically left her. So she was there for about an hour and a half. And when I came back, I was told she'd just cried throughout the entire hour and a half. And the only time she stopped was to ask for some water. So that wasn't the greatest of starts, knowing that she was going for a full, 10 hours the following Tuesday.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of separation anxiety is quite common even with the most independent of kids, and certainly Isaac and Cara are both fairly independent, and we had some issues with them certainly in their first week. But have things improved now?
Yeah, they're good now. I think we're in our third week, just coming up now. The first couple of days when she went properly to nursery, she sort of cried when I left her and didn't want me to go, but soon perked up after sort of like 5 minutes or whatever. And then when I took her for the last time on Thursday just gone, she had like her lip was sticking out a little bit and you could tell that she was on the verge of welling up, but sort of strong little trooper type thing that she is, she just cracked on with it and seemed to have a really good time. So I think we're now over that stage where she views it as an upsetting thing. I think the big thing was she didn't, because I've never left her before, she didn't know what was happening. So not only is it changing, but, all of a sudden the person that's always there wasn't there. So what we started doing was trying to explain it as you'll go to nursery and daddy will go to work just as mummy goes to work, because she understands the concept of work in terms of Hayley goes but then comes back. So I think that really helped, because she started to understand that I was going, but it's not like she was left there forever. I would come back at some point.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear things are getting better. Now, as with anything, there are pluses and minuses to sending your kid off to nursery or to preschool. So early days yet, but talk us through some of the good things and some of the less good things that you've experienced so far.
The good things, well, it means I can do more work and focus on other things. So it frees me up, which is good. And that was sort of the whole point of it to start with. Another thing is that she gets that 100% attention. And it's something I feel quite guilty about, that I haven't been able to give her that 100% attention. But the fact that she can go there, and I think it's sort of like 4 kids to 1 adult, for instance. So, she gets a lot of adult interaction. And it also means things like messy play. I don't really like messy play. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not particularly creative and don't like mess. So being able to for her to go to nursery and actually paint or sand and water and all of these things which I sort of try and avoid, it's good knowing that she can do that in a different environment.
And like you said, there are definitely things that they can do in nursery that you're either less able to do or less willing to do. And I think I joked last week that the 4 words that any parent least likes to hear are daddy or mummy, can we paint? Which is the sort of thing that's always put dread into my heart at the prospect of one of our kids suggesting it.
I can imagine.
Have you found now that on the other days when you do have Toddler L to yourself, have you found your attitude towards how you look after her has changed as a result of her being in nursery during the week?
Yeah, I think it has, and it's a slow burner, but it's something I'm trying to change actively. So the way I'm trying to view it is my work days are when she's not around, and potentially evenings or bits during days when we're just hanging around the house. But on the days when we're together, we try and do more, and I try and spend more time with her. And it's almost like put the laptop down, put the phone down, and focus on her. Almost in a way of having, I guess, 2 lives to an extent. I've got my work life when she's not around and my home life when she's around. And that was the crux of the decision of her going to nursery, so I could try and find that balance. We got to a point where, like, on weekends and stuff like that, we'd go out, but I'd always be feeling a bit like, I should be working. I've got deadlines to hit and everything, and that's not good from a family perspective. So what we're trying to do more on weekends now is spend time together and do things. And something we've done for the past few weeks now is on a Sunday we've just got up and gone out for a walk somewhere nearby, and it's just that being together as a family and spending that time enjoying being with each other, rather than me thinking, I've got to write 3 blog posts today or whatever.
No, I think that's absolutely the case, isn't it? It does create a bit more focus, doesn't it, when you are together, either just yourself and Toddler L, or all 3 of you as a family. And I guess it gives her something to look forward to as well. There are, as you were saying just now, there are certain things that she'll do a lot more of in nursery, and then there are other things that she'll do a lot more with yourself and Hayley. So I guess in a lot of ways it ends up being the best of both worlds for everyone.
It does. It's difficult though, isn't it? Because it's just about trying to find the balance with everything you do. And what I find with a kid, which, I'm sure you've been through it 3 times as well, Tim, but just as you feel like you've got a routine or figured something out, they hit a new milestone and things change again. And it's this continual thing of not knowing how things are going to continue to develop. So, you've got to be so fluid in how you do things.
That is one of the potential dangers, dangers is the wrong word, but one of the potential pitfalls with sending a child to nursery or preschool is that there is a danger that certain milestones are things that they'll pass when they're in someone else's care rather than in your own. But I guess, you've got to the stage where you've been with Toddler L for over 2 years, and a lot of those early milestones, I guess, such as the first step and the first word and so on, are things that you have been able to experience with her.
Yeah, exactly. And at some point, you've got to relinquish control. It's something which I've struggled with quite a bit when we were thinking about the decision of going to nursery. Like, have I failed? Should I have done more? Things like that, like the good old parenting guilt kicking in, because you're in essence shipping her to somebody else to look after during that time. So yeah, it's not easy, is it?
No, but I think we've certainly found through 7-8 years of putting various combinations of kids through nursery and preschool, that I think the experience for us has been overwhelmingly positive. And even though it's been a pretty significant financial drain for us, I think for us there were some very clear and obvious benefits of putting the kids through preschool, and that they far outweighed the negatives. It teaches them social skills that you develop from being in large groups all day. That's pretty invaluable, and it helps absorb some of the shock for when they start school and they're suddenly surrounded by 60 kids 5 days a week. And definitely we found that the last year of preschool really does set them up brilliantly for reception year in terms of laying some of the academic foundations and embedding the kind of routines that you get into when you're in school. So I think for all three of ours, they really hit the ground running when they started school in that respect, whereas I've certainly seen that for some kids who've been at home throughout those early years and not had the experience of nursery or preschool, that sudden feeling of being in a room with dozens of other kids and this bombardment of rules and routines, and you've got to do this at this time, you've got to do this at another time, that can be really overwhelming, at least initially.
I'm just going to say, yeah, I totally agree. Just watching how they do things at nursery, like if they're going to go from one room to another, they line up. If they're going to have food, they'll go and wash their hands. It's just all of these little things which is starting to set routines and set the social norms for what happens when they go to school.
I guess the other thing that springs to mind is that when your kids are in preschool, they do develop friendships that hopefully they'll be in a situation then that they're carried over if some of those friends end up going to the same primary school as well. So you get that provides a bit of an emotional anchor as well. You're not leaping straight into the unfamiliar. Now that's not to say that kids who haven't had the benefit of nursery and preschool don't settle. Of course they do, but for each of our kids, I think it certainly helped that they'd had that experience of 3 to 4 years of nursery and preschool first, which did make the transition that much easier.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
So that's the Meet the Parents Guide to Starting Nursery. Yes, there's some sadness and tears at the beginning, but ultimately we parents get over it. The kids, of course, are fine. So Dave, before we go, what else have you been up to recently?
That is a good question. Whenever you ask me this at the end, I've totally forgotten everything that I've done. What have I done? It's just been ticking over as it normally does, Tim, if I'm honest. We've been going to dance class and swimming class and athletics, sort of aerobics, gymnastics. So that's what keeps us ticking away during the week on the days when she's not in nursery. Yeah, that's about it. I'm boring. What can I say?
And I suppose Elle isn't quite yet at that age where she's become totally consumed by Strictly.
No, I don't think that's going to happen either. I'm going to make sure that she doesn't see that.
No, you see, we thought it would never happen, and then last year they suddenly became hooked. And now I come down in the morning, and I swear Toby and Isaac will be sat down watching old episodes of Strictly on the TV.
Really?
which makes a change from Top Gear. So for us, it's been a pretty routine week for us as well. We finally reached half term, which means the kids are tired and grumpy. Well, even more so than usual. And they've kind of stumbled their way across the finish line to a certain extent. And so, as is our tradition, we're going to be heading off to Butlins for a long weekend next weekend with, I'm sure, lots of Halloween-themed activities in store. And that's it for another episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We're going to take next week off for half term, but we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So in the meantime, here's where you can find Dave and I online.
I'm at thedadventurer.com and on Twitter at @the_dadventurer.
And you can find me at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com and on Twitter at ThatchamDad. So you can download this podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com, and via a variety of podcasting apps. And do also please give us a follow on Twitter at ParentsPodcast and Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thanks very much for listening, and do please join us again next time. Good night.